Okay, so are you ready to totally rethink what you thought you knew? Because today we are diving deep, and I mean deep, into this book that says a dead language is, well, not so dead after all.
We're talking Long Live Latin by Nicola Gardini, right?
That's the one. And before anyone tunes out thinking, ugh, not another grammar lesson, I promise this is anything but tea.
Yeah, what's really cool about Gardini is that he's not some stuffy academic. The guy is a polyglot. He lives and breathes language. You can just tell how much he loves Latin.
It's infectious for sure.
Totally.
Okay.
And it gives him this really unique way of looking at things. He actually argues that Latin is the reason we have literary giants like Dante, Milton, even Shakespeare.
Well, come again.
Seriously, he's saying these masters of language, they wouldn't have been able to craft those masterpieces without Latin as their foundation. It's like realizing your favorite band was totally inspired by this obscure group you've never even heard of. Suddenly their music makes so much more sense.
Okay, I'm with you. So it's about influence. But Gardini also says something about reading Latin being like time travel.
Right, it's like having a conversation with people from history, but not just any conversation. He even quotes Machiavelli, who basically said that when he was reading these ancient texts in his study, it felt like the authors were right there with him, hanging out, debating ideas.
Okay, that's a little spooky, but I get it. There's this connection, right? Like we're engaging with their thoughts, their world, even though they lived centuries ago.
Exactly. It's like tapping into this chain of thought that stretches back millennia. I mean, think about it. The questions W grapple with today, ambition, love, what it all means, these were pondered by people using this very language. It's wild.
Seriously wild. So we're not talking about just declining nouns here.
Oh, absolutely not. And that's something Gardini makes really clear. Assuming there's just one kind of Latin is way too simplistic.
Yeah, it'd be like saying there's only one flavor of ice cream. Vanilla. A little boring.
Exactly. Each author has their own distinct style, their own flavor. You have the formal, structured Latin of Cicero, like a perfectly engineered Roman aqueduct, every word in its place.
I'm picturing those arches.
Mm.
Very impressive, but maybe a tad rigid.
Exactly. Then you have someone like Catullus. Now, he uses language in a way that would probably make your old Latin teacher blush.
Oh yeah, Catullus, the dirty poet. Some of those lines I had to read twice. But it's more than just being shocking, right? There's a method to the madness.
Right. Think about it. Why use those words, especially in a society as status conscious as ancient Rome? Gardini's point is that Catullus used obscenities strategically. Sometimes to dominate, sometimes to challenge societal norms. He was wielding language as a weapon.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. So we're not just talking about vocabulary here. It's authors using language to achieve different things, almost like different tools in a toolbox.
Yes. Take Caesar, for example. His Latin is all about precision, clarity. It's like a military campaign, direct and to the point. And then you have Tacitus. Reading him is like trying to reassemble a shattered vase. It's all fragments and reflection.
Intense.
Right. And then there's Livy, who could take even the most mundane historical event and make it feel like a gladiator fight. You'd be on the edge of your seat.
Oh, totally. You can practically hear the crowds in his descriptions of the battles, the tension in the Senate during those political plots. Talk about being transported back to ancient Rome. But okay, Gardini isn't just giving us a highlight reel of Latin literature, right? He's saying that by really digging into these authors, their styles,
Yeah.
we can actually learn something about ourselves. How does that work?
That's the beauty of it. Let's take Horace, for example. He wasn't just obsessed with writing beautiful sentences, although he did that amazingly well. He actually believed that writing well was directly connected to living well. Right, language is a reflection of who we are at our core. So to truly get Latin, you have to go beyond memorizing declensions and really try to understand the minds and the lives of the people who wrote it. It's like they're speaking to us across centuries, and if we listen closely enough, if we really engage with their words, we start to hear echoes of our own experiences, our own struggles and triumphs. That's when the magic happens. And those echoes, sometimes they can be really unexpected. What pops into your head when you think Latin literature, togas, gladiators?
Totally. Chariot races, maybe some emperors looking stern, the whole Roman Empire, greatest hits. Thanks, history class.
Right, but Gardini's hold on a second. Latin didn't just disappear when Rome fell. It actually became even more important in some ways. It was the language of the church, of scholars, of law. That's where things get juicy.
See, that's what always tripped me up. I had this mental picture of Like monks in dark rooms copying manuscripts, and that was IT for Latin after ancient Rome.
Yeah, lots of people get stuck there.
But Gardini just blows that idea out of the water.
He totally does. He's not denying that Christianity had a huge influence on Latin literature, obviously. But then he throws in a curveball with a guy named Apuleius, who wrote this totally bonkers novel called The Golden Ass.
Okay, I'm intrigued. The Golden Ass. Give me the elevator pitch.
Imagine, like, a mashup of magic, crazy transformations, and humor that wouldn't feel out of place in a modern sitcom.
Hold up. Humor. We're talking about Latin literature here, Rady. Not exactly known for its laugh-out-loud moments.
I know, right? And it's not just, like, witty observations. This is bawdy, almost slapstick stuff. There's this whole scene where the main character, through a series of unfortunate events, accidentally turns himself into a donkey.
He turns into a donkey. Okay, you have to elaborate on that. What kind of magical mishap leads to becoming a donkey?
So this guy, Lucius, he's obsessed with magic.
Never ends well, does it?
Right. He starts messing around with stuff he doesn't understand. Potions, spells, the whole works. And let's just say one thing leads to another and bam, he's a donkey. But here's the kicker. He still has his human mind.
Oh no. That's hilarious. ND. Horrifying. I can only imagine the inner monologue.
That's exactly what Apuleius nails so well. He uses these super vivid descriptions, but then he also does this thing with diminutives. You know, those words that make things sound smaller or cuter. It's kind of unexpected, but it creates this strangely endearing effect, even while Lucius is, running around Asphalus and getting into all sorts of shenanigans.
So even in this totally bizarre situation,
Yeah.
Apuleius is using the specifics of the Latin language to make us care about this guy. That's pretty masterful. And it shows how versatile Latin could be, right?
Totally. And that's a big part of what Gardini wants us to grasp. Latin isn't some, dead museum piece. It's this constantly evolving language that people adapted to fit all these different styles, different genres, different time periods. It speaks to how creative the people who used it really were.
Yeah. Okay, imagine this massive tree. Right. Its roots are definitely planted in ancient Rome, but the branches, they reach out and touch all these different parts of history, different cultures, different ways of thinking. It's kind of beautiful, actually.
It really is. But we've been nerding out about all these authors and their different styles. The what of Gardini's book? What about this so what? Why should our listeners, people who probably haven't thought about Latin since high school, care about any of this?
$1 million question right there.
I know, but Gardini's answer is actually really simple. Learning about these authors, about how they used language to express their world, their thoughts, their feelings, it can teach us how to do the same.
So it's not just about understanding Latin, it's about understanding what it means to be human.
Exactly. He even uses the example of, Caesar's precision. Studying that might help us become better communicators ourselves. Or, appreciating Tacitus's complexity might make us more open to seeing multiple sides of a story. The point is, the challenges we face, the big questions we're trying to answer now, they've been pondered for centuries, often using this very same language.
So he's saying Latin isn't locked away in the past, it's actually relevant to our lives, even today.
100%. And he challenges us to think about how I use language, how it shapes how we see the world and interact with each other.
Wow. I never thought I'd say this about Latin, but that is seriously cool. It's funny. We started out talking about how Long Live Latin isn't your typical boring old textbook, right?
Right.
But honestly, I think it's given us something way cooler than a textbook could.
I'm with you.
It's like Gardini's handed us this map, but not just any map.
Mm-hmm.
This one leads to a world of, big ideas, history, this whole layer of beauty that's hidden in plain sight. At least I never realized it was there.
And he manages to do it all without, dumbing things down. That's what I appreciate.
Totally.
Yeah.
He's not shying away from the fact that Latin is, it's complicated. People were speaking and writing it for centuries. It wasn't all one thing.
Exactly.
It's not like he's trying to sell us some, romanticized version of a perfect language from the past.
Nope.
If anything, he's showing us how messy it was, all the contradictions. That's what makes it fascinating.
Totally. Language changes with the people who use it. I mean, the Latin Caesar used.
Yeah.
Totally different from what Augustine was writing centuries later.
Whoa. When you put it like that, it really shows you how adaptable Latin really was.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's more than just communication. It's like this tool that shapes how people think. But we've been gushing about Gardini and his book.
Right.
Some of our listeners are probably thinking, okay, but can I actually learn this language? And is it even worth it?
It's the question on everyone's mind, right? I think Gardini would say, yeah, it takes effort. No doubt about it. Latin is a challenge.
But, like all good challenges,
There's a payoff. Big time.
it's that view from the top of the mountain, right?
Exactly. And trust me, the view from the Latin mountain, pretty spectacular. You suddenly get this whole new perspective on Western civilization, on history, philosophy. Even English starts to make more sense.
Well, tell me about it. All those Latin roots we've talked about.
Mhm.
Knowing those changes is how you see English completely.
It's like you unlock this secret code.
Yeah.
And that's just the beginning, honestly. Studying Latin can make you a better writer, a clearer thinker.
So, for our listeners out there who might be a little terrified to even try, what would you say to them? Any advice for dipping their toes into this ancient world?
Don't be afraid to start small. Maybe grab a book of Latin proverbs, or even try rooting, like a poem in translation next to the original Latin. There are so many resources now, online courses, apps, heck, even podcasts like ours. It's about finding what clicks for you, what sparks your curiosity. That's how you really learn.
That's such a great point, because when it comes down to it, Long Live Latin is all about that thrill of discovery, right?
Yes.
Finding those hidden connections and realizing how much the ancient world is still relevant to us.
100%. It's a gift, honestly, that Gardini has given us. A new way to look at language and the power it has.
So well said. This whole deep dive has been a revelation for me. I hope our listeners feel the same.
Me too. And hey, who knows? Maybe this will be the thing that gets someone to finally pick up a Latin text and start their own adventure.
And if it does,
We want to hear about it.
Yeah.
Tell us what crazy connections you find, those aha moments. Because like we've learned from Gardini, this conversation, it's far from over.